Yeah, I'm going to talk about Grand Battles, which is a new feature, 30 versus 30, with the 9.20 release of World of Tanks. And this is about why I think that it's going to completely fail, or for the most part, fail. And first of all, I am a sandbox tester. I did testing for Frontline. I think Frontline is a great game, and I think it will absolutely succeed. And it's a 30 by 30 game in 9 different sectored maps. Grand Battles is 30 versus 30 on one map. However, it's not Frontline, and what makes Frontline succeed is going to make Grand Battles fail. I also want to add that I never played Grand Battles. I watch videos of other people playing, and I observe their comments, and I understand what's going on. Now, there was also a game mode called Rampage. There's also ranked battles. There's historical battles. They all failed, and I predicted the failure, and I understand why all of those failed. Because wargaming is making absolutely huge mistakes. They really don't understand the fundamentals of they understand how to make the game, but they don't understand how to keep it as an ongoing game. You know, you traditionally you make a video game, you release it as software, you never make an update, and that's it. But the future is different because now you make a game and it's an ongoing game, and they're constantly updating it, but they're not updating it with the intention of making it a better game. They have a little bit more of a profit motive, and their ideas don't work. And I'm going to show you specifically why Grand Battles is not going to work. First of all, there's twice as many tanks. It's 30 versus 30, which means there's twice as many hit points on the battlefield. However, each individual tank doesn't have more hit points. So if you have 1,000 hit, let's say you have 2,000 hit points on a regular game, you're going to have 2,000 hit points on Grand Battles. But the problem with Grand Battles is you're going to have twice as many people potentially shooting at you. So what's going to happen is the game is going to favor tanks that are shooting at you from a long range with high alpha damage, such as tank destroyers and SPGs. And this is absolutely what happened in Frontline. In Frontline, there comes a point where you play specific tanks that are ideal for the game, depending on what map you're playing on. So what's going to happen is people are going to start playing only the high damage tank destroyers, and they're only going to sit at long range, because what happens in Grand Battles, as soon as you get spotted in the game, everybody in the enemy team starts shooting at you, and you die instantly. So that's what's going to happen in Grand Battles. So the people who complained about SPGs in the regular game are going to complain. They're going to hate Grand Battles because they're going to roll out. They're not going to know how to play. They're going to go out in the middle of nowhere or get spotted anywhere. They're going to get tracked. They're going to get shot at by 10 different tanks. They're going to die, and that's it. And they're going to repeat that behavior because they're casual game players. They don't play every weekend 100 games like I do. You know, they're going to play 5 games a week maybe, so they don't learn the strategies that keep them in the game, and they're going to get tired of it, and then they're going to deactivate Grand Battles, and then there's going to be fewer people playing Grand Battles, and then it's going to take longer to get it into the queue, and then it's just going to be a game that nobody wants to play anymore. Now, in order for Grand Battles to work, you need more corridor-style maps. The reason why we have corridor maps is because SPGs were destroying tanks before they get to the battle zone. And too many people were camping base. Redshire was a good example, El Haluf. When they were afraid to get to the middle of the map because they knew they'd get spotted and they'd get destroyed. So they added corridors, and then what happened was people rushed to the battle zone because they go through a corridor, they don't get spotted, they can't get shot. And then the game ends a lot more quickly because they're not taking their time. They're rushing. The problem with Grand Battles is somewhat similar. When you have large open fields, everyone's going to be afraid to go out in the open, which means they're going to stay along the red line. They're going to stay in the city areas because people don't like to be in buildings. If you're behind one building, you can be flanked by all sorts of different sides. So it's going to be a game that people are going to have to camp in, or they're going to camp in the cities, or any place that's far away. They're going to avoid being spotted, and it's going to be potentially a very slow game once people start to figure out how to play. Open field maps are going to fail under Grand Battles. I'm going to give you some example of some open field maps that failed. Murovanka has something called the Magic Forest. It's not there anymore. They removed it. They replaced it with what's currently there. Now it's a bunch of hills. There's 3 hills, a large one and 2 smaller ones. And before it was completely flat. And when it was flat and it was forest, nobody wanted to go in there because if you get spotted, you'd get shot at by tanks that you couldn't spot back because they're off in the distance and there are lots of trees in the way. So they had to change the map. They had to change it so that it's no longer a flat map and no longer a forest. Now it's a forest with hills in it, so if you get spotted, you can hide. The Nebelberg map for Grand Battles, and even the Grand Canyon map, they're a little bit too flat. And if you're out in the open, no matter what happens, you're going to get pummeled by enemy tanks. And I played on Frontline, and on Frontline, if playing a fast light tank, I got caught in the open, they nailed me hard. And I couldn't, I thought everyone must have been playing aimbots because, like in a regular game with a light tank, you just swerve around, drive real fast, you don't get hit. But on Frontline, I was getting hit by everybody. No matter how far away I was, no matter how I tried to swerve to avoid their shots, I was getting hit constantly. The same is going to happen in Grand Battles. It's going to be very difficult with the Nebelberg map and the Grand Canyon, which has been pulled for the game, to have a functioning game that everybody's going to be happy with. Another problem with Grand Battles, I'm going to talk to you about Tier 6 tanks. Tier 6 tanks have low hit points, and they can play against Tier 8 tanks. A Tier 8 tank can destroy a Tier 6 tank in like 2 shots or 1 shot. So a Tier 6 tank has a lot of problems in a Tier 8 battle. Now, if you look at Tier 8 versus Tier 10, absolutely there are Tier 10 tanks that can destroy Tier 8 tanks in 1 or 2 shots. Not all of them. Now, Grand Battles, although it's being initially released for Tier 10, it's going to be for lower tiers also, probably Tier 9 and Tier 8, not every tier. Because there is this problem, like I said, if you're in a Tier 6 game, there's going to be so many tanks that are going to get destroyed in 2 shots. And no one's going to enjoy playing it. And you have lightly armored tanks like the Leopard or the AMX-30. They have a strong disadvantage because they can get hit at long distance by up to 5 SPGs, by tank destroyers that have high penetration, high alpha damage, and they can't do anything about it. Lightly armored tanks are going to suffer greatly in Grand Battles. All the medium tanks, lightly armored, low hit point tanks have a huge disadvantage on Grand Battles the way the maps are done currently. The maps need major revisions in order for a medium tank to enjoy playing the game. If you make medium tanks like to be in a little bit of an open field, light tanks definitely, but what's going to happen is the tank destroyers like open fields. So all the tank destroyers you're going to get a fast tank destroyer that does high damage like the Grill. They're going to head for the open field, set up a sniping position. As soon as you get spotted, you're going to get nailed. So the fast tank destroyers with high alpha damage any slow tank is going to have a huge disadvantage in this game. The RDs are going to destroy the slow tanks. Even if they're heavily armored, they're going to get destroyed. And even in Frontline, the only time I played a slow tank was if the enemy was literally at the base, at the spawn. You would get a slow tank that has a high damage gun. You go out and you destroy everybody because they don't have slow tanks. They made it to your base. Grand Battles doesn't have respawning. People are not going to play the slow tanks. Actually, the map is a little bit bigger. Yeah, the map is a little bit bigger, but it's big enough that people aren't going to play the slow tanks. They're going to play the fast tanks that do a lot of damage. They're going to hide. They're going to be outside the spotting range. Anybody that gets spotted, they're going to take out of the game very quickly. So it's going to have a new type of camping. You're going to have heavy camping with tank destroyers, etc. So the initial problem, like I said, the people who hated getting pummeled by SPGs are going to hate this game because the hidden snipers that do high damage are going to keep taking them out of the game. It's going to be the casual player that really doesn't have enough time to invest in figuring out the strategy. There's 40 tanks, 40 maps in the game. So if you have to play 40 games to get each map on average once per day. And if you're not playing that many games per day, then you're not going to see the map often enough to learn it. When I was a new player, I realized that I didn't know all the maps. So what I did was I got a fast light tank and I just drove like crazy all over the maps, exploring, even if I died. And it hurt my win rates, but I learned the maps. Just tier 3, driving around like crazy, etc. The second thing is, I didn't like SPGs at first because they would hit me and I didn't understand why, didn't have sixth sense. So what I did was I started playing SPGs to learn how SPGs work, and I learned, okay, for SPGs, you have to hide behind solid objects, you have to constantly move, etc. You have to be unspotted. So I learned the tactics to protect myself against SPGs. I never had a problem with SPGs throughout the game. But people who don't do that, there's a ton of people who don't play SPGs. The number of people who play SPGs is very small in the game. So most people don't know how to counter SPGs. They don't have sixth sense. They're getting pummeled by SPGs. They complained about it. They nerfed the SPGs. They made it so that they don't do damage. They can't one-shot tanks. They stun people instead. What do you think is going to happen? People are going to complain about these high alpha damage TDs. I hate the grill. It took me a long time to come up with strategies to counter those tanks. And the strategy is basically don't be in front of its gun. Don't go in a place where a TD can snipe you. But unfortunately, the way these maps are designed, even if you don't have these types of maps, there's so many tanks in the game that any team that is aggressive is going to get pummeled by the camping tank destroyers and the high damage guns like the Type 5 Heavy that are also camping, and the SPGs. It's a game that's going to be difficult. Now, I'm going to compare it with the game Rampage and Domination. You can look through my old videos and look at my Rampage videos. I had 2 games that I did 15,000 damage. One was 14,700. The other one was 14,900. They were not replays. I didn't go through all my replays and pick the best games. They were live games where I said, okay, I'm going to play a game. I played it and I showed you. I did 14,900 damage. It shows you the end results. It was a live game, etc. It was very easy to do it because I had a technique. There was a lot of hit points in the game. I kept firing my gun constantly. And it was probably mostly by playing autoloaders. And I knew where the enemy was going to be. I lined up to shoot the enemy. There's so many tanks in the game that they're shooting at one guy and I'm shooting at them. So they didn't have time to deal with me because they were busy shooting at somebody else. And I took advantage of that in that game. And the same thing happens in this game. You have to have amazing situational awareness because if you're on one side of the map, you can get sniped by halfway across the map, which doesn't happen on most maps because they design every single map, whether it's Highway or Live Oaks or Murovanka. You know how it is. There's a high elevation sniping position, but the city is always at the edge of your shooting range on all the maps in the game. They design the maps so it's difficult to snipe across the map. Either there's going to be a hill in the way or the enemy is going to have a playing area which is just outside of your sniping range, so you can't snipe across the map. But it's not true on Nebelberg or on Grand Canyon because the way they design the maps, you have to be completely in. Even if you're completely in the town, someone from across the map can snipe you, even if they're sitting at their base. You can sit at base and hit people all over the place. The only people you can't hit are people camping at their own base. So what's going to happen is, when I play the middle of the map so you can hit in all directions. The middle of the map is like people said. I've heard other people say, it's like playing mines. You dominate the middle of the map. You snipe in all directions. It's going to be a game. It's going to change the playing style. It's going to support camping. They're going to need very intricate maps in order to change it and make it more of a gameplay that doesn't kill the game. People are going to be PO'd. They're going to be pissed off that as soon as they get spotted, they're going to get nailed from all directions. And if they don't have sixth sense, they're going to get nailed from all over the place. And who's not going to have sixth sense? People who don't have sixth sense are going to be people who are not paying to play the game because they're not going to have their crew leveled up, number one. Number two, they're not going to have gold People who don't pay don't have gold, which means they're not going to be able to retrain their crew for a perk such as 6 cents. They're going to have to be training 6 cents from the beginning because they can't pay for the gold, and most people don't do that. There's a lot of people in the game who don't have 6 cents, and I know at tier 10 maybe everybody does, but people who don't in the lower tiers, it's going to be going down to tier 8. They're going to be at a strong disadvantage. There's going to be a lot of people who buy premium tanks that are tier 8. I bought premium tanks tier 8 when I was a tier 3 player. The first 2 weeks I played the game, I bought a tier 8 tank. I had a 38% win rate. And I knew that I had a disadvantage and I didn't know the tactics, but I learned quickly. I bought the Super Pershing because it was like the cheapest tier 8 premium tanks. And there's a lot of people who buy the T-34 or the Super Pershing or other tier 8 premium tanks that haven't learned how to play through the tiers yet, and they're at a strong disadvantage. They're not going to have the crew. They don't have the knowledge. They don't have 6 cents. They don't know if you get hit, you got to hide because you're going to get incoming fire from everywhere. They don't know how to counter SPGs. There's going to be 5 SPGs in the game. There's going to be a lot of people who are going to hate this battle mode, and they're going to turn it off. Now, think about it. The other 2 battle modes that you could turn off are Assault Defend and Encounter. And if you go in the forums, there's a lot of people who hate Encounter and hate Assault Defend. I happen to love those battle modes. I don't understand what's wrong with them, but there's people who don't like them. And there's going to be people who aren't going to like Grand Battles. And what's going to happen is it's going to decrease the amount of time it appears in the game. By decreasing the amount of time that it appears in the game, when you do get queued for it, you're not going to get good matchmaking, etc. I'm going to love playing it, I'm sure, but there's going to be a lot of people that are going to hate it. They're going to complain about it. They only have one map. Their history is if people don't like the map, they pull the map from the game. They don't leave it in until they fix it. They pull the map from the game. And if they pull the map, it kills Grand Battles. Grand Battles is going to have major problems until they solve the map issue and the fact that they have imbalance with tanks in the matchmaking. Maybe if it was only tier 10 and only tier 9 and only tier 8, but they don't do that. There's going to be a lot of people who are going to complain. It's going to have a lot of problems, and I predict failure for Grand Battles, just as I predict failure for Rampage Domination. The reason why Rampage Domination failed is because it was a separate mode, and people don't have tier 10 tanks. They restricted it to tier 10. I didn't have any tier 10 tanks. It's a separate mode. You had to play rental tanks. You couldn't play your own tanks. You couldn't play your own crew. You had to log into a separate mode, which means fewer people were going to do it. There were a lot of people who didn't know it was in the game, so they weren't playing. Fewer people were playing. You couldn't queue a battle. Nobody played it after a while. And then people started cheating because the whole clan would queue in at the same time, and they were able to cheat, and it became a problem. Ranked Battles has the same problem. Ranked Battles fails because there's people who aren't good, and they just camp, and they avoid playing. A lot of people lemming, and what happens is people win and advance even though they didn't try. And then the people on the losing team try hard, but they're not in the top 3, and they say, well, you know, the reason why I didn't level up is because I got on the wrong team. Not because I didn't try, not because I wasn't good. The guy who was number 12 on the winning team, I'm better than him, but I didn't level up. So people get pissed off with Ranked Battles, and then the rewards for Ranked Battles is very expensive to play. The rewards are not good enough. The bonds, only a few people get 3,000 bonds in a month. Most people are going to end up with a few hundred. It costs them millions of silver credits to play. I only have 3 tier 10 tanks. I hate playing all of them. I want to play my premium tanks, none of which are tier 10. You know, so it's Ranked Battles has a lot of problems. It's a separate battle mode. And they tried to make it, well, limited time to play doesn't fix the problem. Ranked Battles is going to fail. Grand Battles is going to fail. If you have any questions or comments, please post below.